Chapter 1321. Maisie is being jealous right now. Nolan chuckled as he pulled her back into his arms. But unfortunately, you're just worrying for nothing. She was stunned. Nothing? What do you mean? The smile on his face deepened as he said, you think she likes me, but after I've given her so many chances, she didn't make any advances on me. Apparently, she isn't interested in taking me away from you. She squinted. Could it be that you've lost your charm since you're old now? Nolan did not know whether he should be laughing or getting angry right now. What are you thinking about? Do you really want her to make advances on me? Maisie chuckled. Jokes aside, if he really allowed Cecile to get any closer to him, she would skin him when they got home. Maisie leaned against the back of the chair. I can't believe that she isn't interested in you, but don't you think it's strange if her objective of staying by yourself is to sow discord between us? Nolan leaned closer and rubbed the corner of her lips with his thumb. So, it's time for the show that she has been looking forward to. Maisie looked at him as a plan surfaced in her mind. The next day, at Black Gold, Cecile came to the office as always. Just when she was about to knock on the door, she heard Quincy's voice. Mr. Goldman, are you insane? You're going to get a divorce with Mrs. Goldman? Nolan closed the contract and said, that's the only way now. Otherwise, she will keep on coming here and making a scene. In the worst case, she can have custody of the kids. Quincy raised his voice and said, but, have you forgotten that you wanted to get a divorce with Mrs. Goldman in the past? Are you not worried that she might jump off a building or something if she learns you want to get a divorce again? Nolan squinted. What a surprise. He's a better actor than I am. Someone knocked on the door, and Quincy went forward to answer the door. When he saw Cecile, he said, You're early, Miss Wolfsbane. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not interrupting anything, am I? Cecile smiled. Nope. Quincy moved to one side to let her in. When she put the document on the desk, she saw the divorce papers on the desk. She faked her surprise and said, Mr. Goldman, are you? Nolan did not say anything. Quincy came over and tugged at her as he said, Don't ask anything you shouldn't be asking. Go back to your workstation. Cecile nodded. Okay. After she turned around and went out of the office, she frowned. Is it true that they're getting a divorce? Cecile went to the fire escape stairwell and made a call. Help me check if it's true that Nolan and Maisie are getting a divorce. After she had ended the call, a hint of coldness crossed her eyes. They're getting a divorce so soon? It seems to me that they don't love each other that much either. But if it's true, I can get twice the result with half the effort. At private middle and high school, Daisy went to the next class to look for Lisa. She wanted to go to the library with her, but Lisa was not in the class. She asked one of Lisa's classmates, but the student hesitated to tell her Lisa's whereabouts. She averted her gaze and replied, Lisa, she. Daisy was stunned. What happened to her? The student said in a low voice, a few seniors took her away. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, several high school girls pushed Lisa to the ground. They snatched her bag away and gave it to the long-haired girl who seemed to be their leader. The long-haired girl wore light makeup, and she was the vice president of the student council. She took over the bag and poured everything in it onto the ground. Sitting on the ground, Lisa bit her lips. The girl crossed her arms in front of her chest and gazed across the new and expensive stationery on the ground. It seems to me that Daisy is pretty nice to you. She even gave you such expensive stationery, because she thinks I'm her friend, Lisa replied. A girl walked over and gave her a slap across her face, causing her head to turn sideways. Chapter 1322. The long-haired girl approached her and looked at her in a condescending manner. You think Daisy treats you as a friend, so you consider yourself a princess? Let me tell you something, you can change your appearance, but you can't change the fact that you're poor. Being poor isn't your fault, but you shouldn't take other people's belongings to show off. Lisa clenched her fists tightly. The girl squatted in front of her and grabbed her wrist. She looked at her watch and continued. Look, you can afford a $3,000 watch, because you're Daisy's friend. Does she know about your vanity? Lisa's shoulder trembled. She lowered her eyes and said, I'm not that kind of person. You're not? You have the nerve to say that in front of me. The girl went closer to her. I know all of your secrets. Lisa's face turned pale. Leah. When Daisy arrived, she saw Leah was dragging Lisa. Lisa was sitting on the ground, so Daisy went forward and pushed Leah away. Didn't I already tell you to stop bullying Lisa? Leah clicked her tongue and said, Daisy, I don't understand why you have to be so nice to her. Given your status, you can have all the friends you want, but her. She isn't your friend. Are you not worried that she is cheating on you? Lisa bit her lips tightly. Daisy helped her to get back on her feet, and Lisa said, I'm not cheating, Daisy. Leah laughed coldly but did not say anything. Daisy guarded Lisa behind her and looked at Leah. I know my own friends. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I don't want to see you bothering her again in the future. After that, she brought Lisa away. When they were at the bottom of the building, Daisy turned around to look at her. Are you all right? Why does Leah have to be so mean and keep bullying you? Lisa shook her head and forced a smile on her face. I'm fine. Maybe she doesn't like it that I'm your friend. It's none of her business what kind of friends I have, Daisy replied as she stood with her arms on her waist. If she comes to you again, you've got to tell me, okay? Lisa nodded. Thank you, Daisy. After Lisa finished speaking, she thought of something and asked, do you believe what Leah said? Would you believe her if she said that I became your friend because of money? We've known each other for so many years. Of course, I believe in you. Daisy pinched her cheek. Don't think too much. I don't care about status when it comes to making friends, okay? Lisa smiled. Suddenly, Daisy saw that Lisa's clothes were dirty and said, Your clothes are dirty. You'll be scolded by your mother when you get home, right? Why don't you change into my clothes after school ends later? Huh? Lisa was stunned. All of the clothes that Daisy wore were designer clothes and expensive. No, I think. You already gave me your watch. I can't ask you for anything else. It's okay. We're friends. She grabbed Lisa's arm. Let's go to the library. In the afternoon, Cecile received a text message saying that Maisie had gone to the attorney. The person even sent a photo to her. When Cecile saw the photo of Maisie coming out of the attorney firm, she replied, okay. In the meantime, Maisie leaned against the car door and looked at the text message sent by Cecile. After that, she turned her head around and looked at the man who Sadie had tied up. There was a sock in the man's mouth and bruises on his face. She walked up to the man and said, just as I expected. You've been following me for a long time, haven't you? The man turned his head sideways, decisively. Maisie stored the phone in her purse and said to Sadie, bring him to Glitz. Chapter 1323. Sadie nodded. She grabbed the man up from the ground and shoved him into the car. In a private room of Glitz, a group of bodyguards was beating the man. His hands were cuffed, so he couldn't fight back. The group of bodyguards only stopped when Maisie appeared. She walked to the couch and took her seat. She then looked at the man lying on the floor in a battered state. You're the one who ran Linda over, right? The man remained silent. At that moment, the bodyguard said, Ma'am, this kid is tough. Should we continue to beat him? He won't speak even if you beat him to death. Maisie smiled. There are many other ways to make him speak other than beating him. You're right, ma'am, the bodyguard said as he scratched his head embarrassingly. Maisie stood up and walked up to the man. Cecile. Oh no, I should call her Maxine. It seems to me that you two are rather close. You aren't working with her for money only, are you? You aren't from Basberg. You came here with her from Staslo. The fact that you can avoid the police means you have some skills. She stopped in front of the man and looked down at him. You're pretty good at fighting, so it's safe for me to say that you're a professional, right? Unfortunately, you're still no match for Sadai. The man's face contorted in rage as he said through gritted teeth, if you want to kill me, just do it. Maisie took a glass of wine from the table and splashed it on the man's face without any hesitation. The man was stunned. Looking at him, she threw the glass onto the carpet and said, I'm not the one who should decide if you should die or live. You killed Linda as well as that innocent landlady, so I'll leave that decision to the judge. Seeing the changes on the man's face, Maisie leaned closer and continued, don't worry. Maxine is the mastermind. Just like you, she'll be sent to prison as well. There is a possibility that she'll face a more severe punishment than you. It's me. I'm the one who did it, the man shouted hysterically. He tried to get up from the floor, but the bodyguards did not allow him to. He continued to shout helplessly, this has nothing to do with her. I'm the one who did it, I'm the mastermind. Maisie straightened her body and looked at him calmly. As long as you turn yourself in, I promise you, I won't do anything to Maxine. The man was stunned and then harumphed, why should I trust you? Well, it depends on you. After all, you're in our hands now. Maisie crossed her arms in front of her chest and smiled with raised eyebrows, it's going to be a breeze if I want to take Maxine down. The man did not say anything in return. In the meantime, Cecile was making coffee in the pantry. Suddenly, she received a text message on her phone. When she read through the text message, her face turned grim. He has turned himself in? What the hell is going on with him? Could it be that there's a change of plan? Was he busted? Cecile left the pantry. She entered the fire emergency exit and called another number. Brian may have been busted. Go to the pier now and meet me there. Cecile walked to the parking lot and left in her car. Sitting in front of the monitor, Quincy watched as Cecile drove away from the parking lot. He turned his head around to look at Nolan and said, Sadai has captured her subordinate. She thought her plan was busted when she received the news that her subordinate had turned himself, but what she doesn't know is that Mrs. Goldmann released the news. It occurred to them that Cecile was truly decisive, and it would be difficult to find her once she escaped. After all, she hadn't revealed her true identity yet. This was all possible thanks to Maisie's plan. Since Cecile was trying to sow discord between them, they just needed to use divorce as bait to lure her into their trap. Besides, she would definitely send someone to find out whether the news was true or false. Therefore, Sadai had been hiding in the dark and waiting for her chance to strike. That was what had happened in front of the attorney firm today. Chapter 1324. The wolf won the game when the shepherds quarreled. Of course, they were able to get her. Nolan narrowed his eyes. Is everyone already in their positions? Quincy nodded. Yes. We've got people watching the sea, near the airport, and the state highways. He turned around and went out. Then, let's roll out. When Cecile arrived at the pier, she saw that there were a few cars around the pier. She stopped her car and made a call. Where are you? The voice from the other side of the line told her that they were still on their way. They also told her that there was a roadblock along the way. Cecile stared at the few cars on the pier, and her face slowly turned grim. You guys don't need to come here anymore. You guys try to get yourself out of there first. Before the person could say anything, she ended the call decisively. She threw a look at the pier and left. Meanwhile, Maisie and Sadai came out of Glitz. Just when she was about to get into her car, her phone rang. When she saw it was an unknown caller number, she hesitated for a while before answering it. Hello. It's me. Maisie frowned. Miss Wolfsbane? Cecile should be on the run right now. Why would she call me? The woman on the phone chuckled, what a good show you and Mr. Goldmann have put up. You nearly got me. Something crossed Maisie's eyes, and she smiled. What do you mean, Mississippi Wolfsbane? Cecile looked out of the window and said, you guys aren't going to get divorced, are you? You worked together to stage a show to force me to show my true face, right? She had sent Brian to check if it was true that they were getting a divorce. When Brian suddenly said he would turn himself in, she knew he must have been busted. She thought there was a change of plan, and they had to leave immediately. However, a few cars were on the pier, and her men were still stuck halfway down the road due to a roadblock. Once they were found out to have entered the country illegally during the roadblock, they would be detained. It seemed to her that they were prepared for her. After Cecile finished talking, Maisie chuckled. Are you sure it isn't because of your identity that you got exposed, Mississippi Wolfsbane? Stop beating around the bush. So, what if you guys know who I am? Cecile laughed coldly. Are you going to arrest me? I'm the one who helped you get rid of Linda. Shouldn't you be thanking me? Maisie's face sank. No matter how bad the relationship between Linda and me was, you shouldn't have killed her, Maxine. Cecile laughed. Even when her identity was revealed, she didn't deny it or get nervous. As I expected, you guys already know who I am. It's no fun to be found out like this. It isn't challenging at all. Maisie frowned. Do you think human life is a game for you to play with? If you think Linda shouldn't have died that way, then why did you reject her? She was a woman who was driven to desperation. She was willing to poison you in order to pay back the high penalty fee, and now you sympathize with her? Maisie's face turned grim, but she did not say anything in return. Cecile then continued, Pearl lost her reputation because of you. You didn't even let go of your two sisters from the Vanderbilts. We're the same type of people. We are no good people, and I'm just doing what you don't dare to do. Maxine, stop trying to mislead me, Maisie said expressionlessly. I'm not the same as you. I believe in an eye for an eye, but I won't pull innocent people into my revenge. So, what if I rejected Linda? I don't have an obligation to help her pay the money. Even if I'm a good person, there's a limit to it. A person who doesn't know when to stop being good is stupid. However, you can even kill an innocent landlady, so who are you to criticize me? Cecile's smile froze, and she harumphed coldly. Yes, you people are always right, and I'm always wrong. I tried to persuade my mother to stop putting herself so low, and that she should give up on that man, but she thought I was mocking her for being a homewrecker. Thus, she kicked me out of the house, despite the fact that I was her daughter. I helped her get revenge, but she hated me for life. I don't think I'm wrong, but she thinks I'm wrong. Chapter 1325. And that kind older sister of mine. I'm grateful that she gave me the opportunity to study at the Turner Institute of Art, but in reality, she still thought that I was inferior to her. She was worried that I would bring disgrace to her, so she told me what to do in my studies. Whenever my teacher complimented me, they'd be calling her name. I hated her. I hated her more than anything in this world. Therefore, when Rowena burned her to death, I was finally free. I didn't have to live as her shadow anymore. Maisie felt a chill down her spine when she heard what she said. She took a deep breath and asked, What do you mean by telling me this? You still don't know, right? About Sue's death, Cecile laughed. Why do you think Rowena could kill Sue? Even when a living person is in a deep sleep, they will wake up nonetheless during a fire due to the smoke. Do you guys think Rowena started the fire after killing Sue? Well, you are wrong. Maisie felt a tingle on her scalp. Sue had died during a fire. They all had been under the impression that Rowena had started the fire to destroy the evidence that would point at her for killing Sue. When Maisie had gone to look at Sue's place, the house owner had said that the door was locked from the inside. Now that she thought about it, she realized that they had overlooked one thing. If Rowena had started the fire after killing Sue, she would not have needed to lock the door. After all, Sue was dead. By the time the fire was put out, she would have already been charred and unlikely to be alive. Locking the door of the room from inside would only arouse more suspicion. At that moment, Cecile's calm voice wafted into Maisie's ear. This is because I killed her through Rowena's hands. Maisie was stumped. What? She laughed heartily and sounded as if it was something that made her happy. I've always wanted to kill Sue, so I put a sleeping pill into her water. I could start my plan when she fell asleep after taking the drink. But then, shortly after I left, I saw a woman sneaking into Sue's room, and I wanted to see what she was going to do. I didn't expect that she was going to set her on fire. I couldn't be happier that someone did this for me, and when she escaped, I locked the door from inside to ensure that Sue would die. Even if she could wake up midway, it would be too late. Besides, what if others suspected me? I'm not the one who set the fire. I just locked the door while I was on my way out, right? Maisie pressed her lips thin and gnashed her teeth. You're insane. I always thought I was insane too, but I was forced to do it, so now I want to do something even crazier. Mrs. Goldmann, guess where I am now? Cecile laughed triumphantly. A bad feeling rose in Maisie's heart, and she asked, what do you mean? Cecile looked toward the private school and took a look at her watch. School session is almost over, right? I'm really curious how you would react if something were to happen to your daughter or son when they're on their way home. Maxine. Maisie hastily got into the car. Leave them out of this. You're the one who said I'm insane, and there's nothing an insane person wouldn't dare to do. Cecile continued to taunt Maisie. I can do everything that Rowena did. Do you think she lost at your hands? No, she lost at the hands of a man. She's stupid, just like my mother. She cared about nothing but those heartless men. If not, do you think she'd die under the sea? After all, she's someone I look up to. Before waiting for Maisie to say anything, she ended the call. Maisie looked at her phone, and a bad feeling rose from her stomach pit. She said to Sadai, quickly. We need to go to school right now. Chapter 1326. At the private middle and high school. Middle school students and high school students walked out after school. Most of the students in the school were fetched to and back from school by their families' private vehicles. Seeing a luxury car parking outside the school's gate had always been a common scene. Lisa stood outside the school gate and waited for Daisy. She was wearing her clothes. Daisy was slightly late, so she took out her cell phone and took a selfie. Several students then walked by her and looked back at her. Lisa put her phone away and lowered her head in embarrassment immediately. However, she heard the students talking about her clothes. That blouse looks so beautiful. It must be expensive. There are so many rich people studying in this school. It's normal to run into someone who wears designer clothes. Lisa knew they were talking about her clothes, but she pretended she did not hear them. Still, she felt delighted deep down. Lily Daisy came out and placed her arm on Lisa's shoulder. Why don't you go home in my car later? I'll send you back home. Lisa was stunned for a moment. She wanted to agree to that idea originally, but she lowered her head instantly when she saw Leah and the others looking at the both of them. That's fine. I'll just grab a cab and go back by myself. There's no need to trouble you even more. Daisy did not see Leah and only thought that Lisa did not want her to send her home. Okay, then be careful when you're on your way home. Lisa nodded. The car that came to pick up Daisy stopped not far away. Seeing that Colton was already waiting for her in front of the car, she waved at Lisa to bid her goodbye and ran straight toward Colton. The two got into the car and left. Seeing that Leah and the others had not left, Lisa did not dare to stay back at school alone any longer, so she quickly left. However, she did not know that two men were staring at her from the inside of a van when she walked past the van. One of the men picked up the photo in his hand and took a glimpse at it. The photo did not show the face of their target, but the clothes that the girl wore in the photo looked exactly the same as the clothes that the girl was wearing now. Is the girl who just walked past us the Goldmann daughter? The other man turned his head. It seems so. Lisa took out her cell phone, lowered her head, and posted the photo she had just taken on her Instagram. She already had 150,000 followers, and each of her photos or videos had thousands of comments. Soon after she uploaded her latest photo, heaps of likes and comments started coming in. In addition to those who praised her for her looks and achievements, some were envious of her superior lifestyle. Just when she stopped to reply to some of the comments, a van appeared out of nowhere and outflanked her way. Before she could react, someone had already covered her mouth and dragged her into the van. The car sped away. And only one shoe was left behind on the ground. On the other hand, Maisie received a call from Quincy as soon as she arrived at the school. She was finally relieved to learn that the children had arrived home safely. Thank God. Thank God that Maxine didn't succeed. She hurried back to the Goldmann mansion, and as soon as she entered through the door, she saw Daisy and Colton sitting on the couch vying for a fruit salad. Nonetheless, she was happy to see that the children had returned home safely. She walked upstairs and happened to meet Nolan, who was standing in the corridor on the phone. When the call was over, he turned his head to look at Maisie as Maisie strode forward toward him, and he stretched out his hand to welcome her as she threw herself into his arms. Feeling her shudders, Nolan stroked her hair and chuckled hoarsely. Everything's all right now. Haven't the children returned home safely? But I'm still afraid. Her voice sounded choked. She was not afraid of what Maxine would do to her, but she was afraid of involving her children. Thinking of something, she looked up at him, and her teary eyes looked crystal clear and moving. Maxine didn't manage to get what she wanted this time, so she'll definitely be back again. My intuition tells me that she's someone who will do anything in order to achieve her goals. Chapter 1327. Nolan carried her into the study and closed the door. We found out about Maxine's life experience. She was startled. Her life experience? Nolan walked behind the desk, opened the drawer, took out a document, and placed it on the desk. Thanks to our son, Waylon. Maisie's eyes moved as she picked up the documents and saw the result of the DNA identification. She was shocked. The kinship rate between Maxine and Rowena is as high as 95%. Are they sisters? Nolan responded lightly, they're half-siblings. Maisie suddenly remembered the words that Maxine had used to describe her mother on the phone. So, their mother was Mr. Summers' lover. She took a deep breath. Maxine knows about this. She knew that Rowena, Sue, and she were all half-sisters. Nolan loosened his tie. Just take a look at the date above. Maisie's gaze shifted to the date. This identification had been made a few years ago when Rowena faked Sue's identity. The paper looked new, but only because the results had been reprinted. There was a knock on the door, and Quincy pushed it open and walked in. Mr. Goldman, Mrs. Goldman. Nolan lifted his head. How was it? Quincy replied, her two accomplices escaped, and Maxine seems to have gone into hiding. Maisie pursed her lips tightly and said nothing. Nolan tapped the desk with his knuckles. All of them can't leave Bassburg now, and they won't be able to hide for long. In a remote and abandoned factory building. The light bulbs on the walls were dimly lit, and it was dark outside the window. Lisa's mouth was covered with tape, and her eyes were obviously swollen as if she had been crying a lot. Her hands and feet were tied, and she curled her body into a ball, shivering in the corner of the room with a trace of fear flashing across her eyes. Two men were sitting at a nearby table drinking and playing cards when they heard the sound of a car arriving outside. They got up, went out, and pulled up the shutters. Maxine got out of the car and walked straight into the warehouse. Where's the girl? The man replied, we've abducted her. All we're waiting for is your next instruction. However, when Maxine saw the little girl who was cowering in the corner, her expression turned gloomy, and she slapped the man with the back of her hand. You regard this as abducted? I told you to kidnap Nolan Goldman's daughter, but who is this? The two men were stunned for a moment. But we compared her with the person in the photo. The dress she's wearing is from a huge brand. Could it be that she isn't our target? Maxine glared at them, and the two men lowered their heads and stopped talking instantly. She went up to Lisa. There were still tears welling up in the corners of Lisa's eyes. She had overheard their conversation just now. They were trying to kidnap Daisy, and they've mistaken me for Daisy? Looking at the woman in front of her, Lisa could not help but tremble, and she could only whimper at the moment. Since they've caught the wrong person, I can only hope that this woman will let me go. Maxine tore off the tape on her mouth, leaned over, and looked at her expressionlessly. What's your relationship with Nolan Goldmann's daughter? Lisa's teeth were chattering. I'm her friend. Friend? Maxine rubbed her chin meaningfully and looked at the little girl. Then can you help me to lure her out? What? Lisa felt a sheer coldness down her spine, and she was stunned in place. Maxine scoffed. Are you afraid? Lisa trembled vigorously and did not dare to look her in the eyes. Yes. Maxine pinched her chin tightly. That's the emotion that I need you to feel. If you want to get out of here alive, then lure the daughter of Nolan Goldmann out for me. I don't care what's the reason that you put forward. You are friends, aren't you? She should trust you a lot. Chapter 1328. The blood was drained from Lisa's cheeks and limbs, causing her to look extremely pale and feel cold in her hands and feet. Must I ask Daisy out? But am I going to betray Daisy? Daisy is my friend. Seeing her hesitate, Maxine let go of her, straightened up her posture, and gave off a cold gaze. If you don't want to do so, then do you want to die on her behalf? A sentence was all it took to frighten Lisa to the extent of sobbing. But what? Friendship is the most fragile thing in the world. She's the daughter of the regal Goldmann, and her life is worth more than yours. Do you think it's worth it for you to die for her? Maxine squatted and gently stroked her hair. Young girl, sometimes, people sacrifice all their interests and bottom lines to survive, including their friends. If you don't want to sacrifice your friends, you can only sacrifice yourself. Do you want to live or die? Maxine grabbed her hair all of a sudden. Speak. Lisa's scalp was in pain, but she did not dare to cry out loud. I want to live. Maxine smiled in satisfaction and dragged Lisa closer to her. That's more like it. I'll take you back to your school tomorrow, and you must lure the daughter of the Goldmann out at all costs. And if you dare escape. Maxine's expression turned ruthless. I'll kill you. Lisa nodded obsequiously, and her tears kept gushing down. Maxine turned around and looked at the two men. Keep an eye on her. If she dares to escape, I'll break your legs. The two men grinned. Don't worry. With us watching her, she won't be able to escape. After Maxine left, Lisa cowered in the corner and sobbed in a low voice. She was so scared that she felt both distressed and agonizing deep down. She did not know why she had to go through these things. She did not want to betray Daisy. But she was afraid. Outside the window, there was only the silent and boundless night sky. Lisa did not dare to sleep through the night. She could only stare into the darkness and wait for the dawn. The next day, at the private middle and high school. When Daisy and Colton came to the school, several bodyguards came with them. The bodyguards watched as they entered the school and did not leave after that but stayed where they were. Colton waited for Daisy to go in first, then turned back and came to one of the bodyguards. Dad must have asked you to follow us around. Did something happen? The bodyguard paused for a split second and lowered his head to answer him. Young Master Goldmann, this is what Mr. Goldmann wants. There might be danger in the near future. Colton pondered for a bit and walked back into the school without uttering a single word. When the bell that signified the end of the first period rang, Daisy went to the next classroom to look for Lisa, but was told that Lisa had not come to class. Daisy was astonished. Is Lisa sick and has asked for a medical leave? The classmate replied, I don't know. The teacher didn't elaborate much. Anyway, I didn't see her in class today. Daisy stood in the corridor with a bewildered expression. Why didn't Lisa come to school? Could it be because of what happened yesterday? She picked up her cell phone and called Lisa. No one answered the first call, but she got through on the second try. Lisa, why didn't you come to school? Are you sick? Daisy asked thoughtfully. Lisa's voice sounded a little stiff. No. No, I'm on my way to school now. Daisy, can you come out and pick me up later? Daisy felt that something was wrong. Are you all right? I'm really fine. Lisa's hands trembled so badly that she could only hold them tightly together. I'm arriving late, and I'm afraid of being scolded. I'm sorry, you'll come out and pick me up, won't you? Seeing that she was about to cry, Daisy smiled helplessly. Okay, then call me when you arrive. I'll go out and pick you up. Don't worry. If the teacher wants to see you, I'll explain everything to the teacher for you. Chapter 1329. Yeah. Upon hearing what Daisy said, Lisa's tears rolled down. But Maxine had already cut off the call before she could say anything. She handed Lisa's cell phone to the man sitting in the front passenger seat, turned her head to look at Lisa, who was weeping softly right next to her, and patted her shoulder with a smile. Don't be afraid, aren't you friends? If you're friends, she'll understand your actions even if you betrayed her. Soon, Daisy received a call from Lisa, who was currently waiting for her at the parking lot outside the school. She ran to the school gate but was stopped by one of the bodyguards. Young lady, where are you going? I'm going to pick up my friend. Daisy pushed the bodyguard away. Nonetheless, the bodyguard managed to block her way. You can't go out. Mr. Goldmann said that both you and the young master can't leave before school is over without his permission. What do you mean? Daisy was a little pissed off. I'm just going out to pick my friend up and bring her to her class. She got here late, and she was afraid of being scolded. She's my friend, and I can't just sit back and watch. Seeing that he still refused to let her through and was still standing in her way, Daisy stood with her arms akimbo. Are you going to let me through, or what? The bodyguard lowered his head, but his expression was unchanged. Young lady, please don't make things difficult for us. Just as Daisy was about to say something, Colton appeared behind her. Daisy. Daisy ran up to Colton, grabbed his arm, and harassed him. Colton, I want to go out to pick Lisa up, but they won't let me through. Please help me to get them out of my way. Colton frowned. Even if Lisa has asked you to pick her up, you can still wait for her here. There's no need to go out. Daisy was stunned for a moment. She was so worried about Lisa that she had forgotten about that. She quickly picked up her phone and called Lisa. After the call was connected, Daisy said, Lisa, I'm waiting for you at the school's gate. Come over here. The man turned on the loudspeaker. Lisa looked at Maxine cautiously when she heard Daisy's warm voice. Maxine's eyes turned cold, and her gaze was fixed on the few men standing right next to the school gate in the distance. She then signaled the man to hang up the call. Lisa's gaze looked saddened, and she became more and more nervous. Maxine looked at Lisa, clicked her tongue, and scoffed. Look, that girl that you call your friend doesn't even care about your safety. Lisa's face turned ashen. Daisy was surprised by the abrupt end of the call. She tried to call back, but Lisa's phone had already been turned off when she called again. She turned around. Colton, could something have happened to Lisa? She's turned off her phone. Colton held his chin, thought about everything he had seen and heard so far, and grabbed Daisy's hand suddenly. Come, let's go to the computer room. Colton and Daisy came to the computer room to borrow a computer. He then operated the computer skillfully and used advanced software to track Lisa's phone through its GPS location. Sure enough, the phone was on the move, and it was leaving the school at high speed. Daisy was even more worried. Colton, has something really happened to Lisa? She doesn't usually turn off her phone. She thought of Lisa's voice when they were talking over the phone. It sounded very strange. Colton responded with a hum. Maybe. Then what should we do? Did Lisa get kidnapped? Colton, we have to find a way to save her. Daisy could not stay calm anymore. Lisa was her friend and was in danger, so she could not just ignore her. Colton turned off the computer and stood up. We can't act rashly. We can only tell Dad about this. At the police station. Maisie sat on the bench in the corridor and waited patiently. After a while, a police officer came to her with all the documents. Ma'am, the criminal has confessed, and the trial will be held at the end of the month. In addition to the intentional homicide hit and run, the other party has also entered the country illegally. As for the judgment, the court will provide us with a verdict. Chapter 1330. Maisie stood up. Thank you for the hard work. The police officer responded, You're welcome. It's thanks to you, ma'am. You're the one who's able to convince the criminal into a confession. Maisie smiled. Rather than saying that I've convinced him into a confession, I believe it sounded more like a threat. It seems that this man is extremely loyal to Maxine. He'd rather take on all the charges than implicate Maxine. Maisie left the police station and sent a message to notify Yorick. After all, she had promised her uncle she would inform him of the result. As soon as she got into the car, her cell phone rang, and her eyes dimmed when she glanced at the caller ID. She picked up the phone and answered it but did not speak. The other party giggled. Maisie Vanderbilt, you should be very thankful that your daughter's fine. Maisie remained calm and composed. Maxine Reynolds, what do you want? Don't even think you can force me to give up just because I can't leave town. Maisie Vanderbilt, you do care about your daughter's life. Other parents would care about their children's lives too, wouldn't they? Maxine's words startled her for a short moment, and she frowned. What are you planning to do this time around? Maxine laughed. Your daughter's friend is with me. What's her name? I can't seem to remember it well. Oh, it's Lisa, isn't it? Maisie remembered her. She's Daisy's friend. Maisie bit her lower lip. You've kidnapped an innocent child just to threaten me? Yeah, you said you wouldn't implicate innocent people, but your daughter has already gotten one person implicated. If your daughter hadn't lent her clothes to her friend, causing my men to mistake her, she wouldn't have fallen into our hands, would she? If she dies, it's you who's caused it. Maisie Vanderbilt, the fact that an innocent child died because of your daughter will surely haunt your conscience for the rest of your life, ha ha ha. Maisie's expression changed suddenly, and she was about to say something when Maxine cut off the call abruptly. Sadie looked at her worriedly. Ma'am. Maisie took a deep breath. Maxine kidnapped an innocent girl, and we must rescue the child. Contact Nolan for me, and I'll track Maxine down. Sadie was worried. Are you planning to go there alone? I'll go first. You can follow me right after this. Don't worry, I'll be careful. After laying out her plan, Maisie pushed open the door and got out of the car. Maisie stopped a taxi and left. She then picked up her cell phone and called Maxine, let's meet. I'll be alone. Maisie took a taxi to the suburbs and asked the driver to let her off on the side of the road. When the driver left, she glanced at the van parked across the road. Two men brought her to the abandoned factory, her hands were tied, and her cell phone had been confiscated. Maxine came out of the factory. You actually have the guts to come and meet me by yourself. You must have informed Nolan long ago, haven't you? Maisie smiled. You're holding on to an innocent girl's life. Wouldn't you kill her if I were to inform Nolan beforehand? Maxine walked to the side, took a packet of cigarettes out of her handbag, and lit herself a cigarette. That may be the truth, but it won't matter much if Nolan is here. She held the cigarette with her fingertips and puffed a mouthful of smoke. What can he do to me when you and that girl are in my hands? Maisie asked calmly, where's the girl? Why do you care so much when she's not even your daughter? Maxine walked up to her. Is it possible that a girl who's not related to you by blood is more important than your own life? Maisie stared at her. This is a matter between us. It has nothing to do with the girl. You have me now, so let her go. Maxine laughed out loud all of a sudden and took a glance at one of the men. The man nodded, walked into the factory, and brought Lisa out.